Welcome to the J Money Podcast. Welcome to the J Money Podcast. Welcome to the J Money Podcast. We like to talk about all sorts of things.
What's up?
Hi.
We're here with Jacqueline Stevens, a relationship expert who regularly teaches in Santa Monica to Santa Monica people and people of Southern California in general about relationships.
Yep. We
Right?
need it.
And we've been working on getting this for like 6 months. And we
Forever.
finally get
We're here.
to get it. So thank God. Thank God.
A little mic problem, but you worked it out. I'm so proud of you.
It's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes you got audio connection things. And, you know, I'm always just working on not having a nervous breakdown when those things are happening. And, you know, I think it's that spilled milk thing. They say how your parents reacted to spilled milk is how you react
For
to like
sure.
errors.
Yeah.
And so like I just have catastrophized things because I would just get yelled at right away,
Totally.
just screamed at, like,
Yep.
you know. So, you know, I have a question though. You're a relationship expert.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, can I tell you before you even
please.
ask?
Yeah.
Like, I love holding the space for you, you know? Because I think as adults, whenever we're reacting or triggered, it's kind of like our inner child comes out, like we throw these fits.
Yeah.
And for me too, when I was a kid and I saw my parents did this, like I wanted to like fix everything. So how can I help? And as I've grown in my own journey, it's like now I can just kind of like sit with people when they're having a, you know,
You're good at
moving
that.
through their process.
I've noticed that you're good at that.
Yeah, and at one point I was like,
Yeah.
you know, do you want me to help?
Yeah. What was that line you
Yeah.
told me? You said this is a great opportunity for, what did you say?
Yeah, I was like, what a wonderful opportunity to move through some resistance. Because you were like, this has never happened before. And I was like...
I was moving like a gorilla like
Yeah.
that too. I totally was.
But what's fun is like,
Yeah.
when it's never happened, when it happens the first time, it gets like, we're really upset, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And we're like, what the heck? So what I think is so cool is when you're on a path of personal growth or development, which I think a lot of people in this space are,
Yeah.
we can just kind of look at anything as like, and it's annoying in the moment, right? You might be upset.
Yeah. But when you handle it cool, and sometimes I'm able to handle it cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like it used to be. Like, I've
No.
done a lot of work. But,
For sure.
I mean, before, I've had points where I'm, like, picking things up and throwing
For
things
sure.
and, like, breaking, and then making it way worse.
Yep.
And then, like, self-sabotaging. It'll turn from, like, a small error to me Tai Chiing that small error into self-sabotage.
Ooh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
But then I like that you could Tai Chi maybe your way out of that self-sabotage.
Yeah, I mean, if I was loved growing up. Yeah.
But now you get to do it. We get to do it for ourselves, right? We get to love ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, how would I reparent little baby Jameson?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we get to do in relationships.
And I've done it, and I've had to ask myself, like, yes, there are positive results to, like, symbolically and subconsciously and projecting, like, my own love of myself as a child. I had a therapist that helped me do that.
Yeah.
She was like, what I want you to do is imagine yourself at a point when you were a child and, like, you walk up to yourself. So there was this, like, Little League baseball diamond I used to hang out at.
Yeah.
And so I visualized me walking up to myself, and she's like, okay, now put an arm around yourself and be your own protector and open, like, a multi-dimensional door and bring your child
Yeah.
into a safe space.
Yeah.
And then once I did that, I was in my music studio that I had built for myself and realized that that was the safe space I built for myself as an adult, but I was building it for myself as like a child.
Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, there's something to that energy of like stepping back, being with ourselves. We even did this last night, right? And guide yourself into this new space where you can both be together. Because the reality is that inner child is just our unconscious. It's always going to be there. We always get to work with it. It's never done. And that might be annoying, but then if you're like, oh, it's never going to be done, then you can kind of have peace with the fact that there's always going to be a trigger, a new person, a new something.
Yeah. It's about the internal tools of being able
Yeah.
to handle no matter what the external throws at you.
Yeah. So I kind of like to think of it as like slowing down. So it's like this trigger comes at you and hits you, and in the old days it hit you and you'd move really quick and like respond. Yeah, exactly. And now it comes and it's like, I think of it, it's like pings me and I like move back and I like bounce against the trampoline and I'm kind of like slowing down and I'm like, oh, I'm in response. Like, isn't this interesting? So that's the power of conscious awareness. Yes. Is I like to think like, oh, I go meta. I go above myself when I'm looking down and I'm like, oh, isn't that, we're pissed.
Yeah, you're almost be able to handle it like a Sims. You're almost looking at yourself.
That's exactly what. That's what meditation is.
Yeah.
It's going into this
Sim
other
mode.
Yeah, like, and again, it's called meta, but like it's the one mind. It's the thing that's above your mind. It's the thing that you get to have conversation with. The voice that's always steady.
Yeah.
And I didn't used to have access to that because I had all these thoughts that were always moving through my head, and I couldn't find that strong voice. But that strong voice is what can observe our experience so that we're like, oh wow, I'm feeling so fucking overwhelmed.
Yeah.
How can I slow this down a little? And I think for me, most people really want to get something right. We want to do it perfect, but just recognizing that's not real.
Yeah.
Helps a lot.
Yeah. So relationships.
Yeah.
Why is the divorce rate so high?
Yeah. Okay, so we can talk about a couple of things here. First is, I think that it's important to recognize that we're now in this place where relationships are more of a choice than a have to.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and before, so
more of a need than a now want.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, but here's the thing: it actually still is a need, and that's what's really important for us to remember.
Interesting. Expand upon that.
Yeah. So relationships for a long time were in a place of survival, right? And I'll speak to women. That's what I am. So women had to be married in order to have, economy. We couldn't have our own. Credit cards, bank accounts, property. Women were looked at as property.
Born into dependency.
We were born into dependency. And so it was essential for a woman basically to get married. That was her role in society. And so people stayed together because for the most part, they had to. You didn't really have a choice. It didn't matter if your partner treated you well. Also, marriages for a very long time weren't even about love. Right now our relationships, it's like, I want to be in love, right? It's a very different, romance is actually a relatively new idea. Like a romantic love is only 100 150 years old.
Interesting.
So we've got the dynamic of like power play, so that's why relationships lasted longer before. And now of course we've gone through the feminist era where women have more access to creating education, employment, having finance. It wasn't even until the 70s that we could have a credit card. We couldn't get business loans. I think it was until like 1993. So women have made all of this massive movement and I'll call this our masculine bodies. Masculine meaning masculine energy is about mind and physicality. We all have it. And so women have, I love to use the terms, covered the spread, right? We did all this stuff at home with the family. We were good in that role. And now we're like killing it.
Yeah. And you're killing it so much that I actually recently saw that the gender gap of college graduates in female favor, the percentage difference is now even greater than it was in like 1970 from male to female. Yeah. So now there's a what's becoming a massive disparity from like females are dominating males in the way that males used to dominate females. What do you think about that?
When we're looking at the data, yes, it's easy to look at it like that, but I don't want to use the term dominate because then it's about power.
But it kind of is these days. There kind of is like an invisible gender war.
Well, I don't even think that's invisible. It's like a lot of people. There is a perceived gender war in terms of men and women feel pitted against each other.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is due, I'm not blaming feminism at all. Feminism has been one of the best things that has literally ever happened in terms of global security for women. And with that happening, women again have kind of covered the spread. It's been destabilizing for men. And so, yes, less men are graduating college, more women are becoming higher earners. And that has really like destabilized men in terms of like, what's my role, right? Like, what's my role in society?
Yeah.
What's my role in relationship? And so with any, and it's not that women have more power than men, it's just that men were here before and now women have the opportunity and men almost don't know what to do with that. Rightfully so. It's like, this is the first time we've kind of gotten to this problem in history. So I have a lot of compassion. Of course, I'm a woman, for women who've like been through it and had challenging experiences with men, but I'm also really like on the side of men who may really want relationship and may really be struggling with their career financially and want relationships and don't really necessarily know how to start, because ultimately relationships are the number one thing that keep us healthy. It's what keeps us mentally healthy, physically healthy.
Yeah, it's true. As soon as a good relationship is in front of you, or at least for me, whether it's a friendship or a relationship or like a family, and you have that positive, like, hey, good to see you.
Yeah.
Like, everything instantly is at ease. Like the chemistry is all set at ease in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
It really is about relationships.
100%. And what you're speaking to, like, if you think of like the biology of that, what's happening, even when Jameson gives me a hug, he's always like, you feel so good, right?
Yeah.
And what's happening is we have created this relationship. So ultimately we like regulate each other's nervous system, right? Even when you were upset over here, I'm like, is there anything I can do to like...
Oh, you held it so centered.
Totally.
Well, I was just like, and you know what's interesting about that is, I simultaneously knew that you were having like a healthy holding of the positive outlook. And it was also irritating me that you were having that outlook, because I almost wanted somebody to join in my anger.
Yep.
But that wouldn't have been what would actually have been productive, which is
we would have tailspinned, right? Yeah.
It would have avalanched. But sometimes the avalanche feels good.
Yeah.
And I think it's within our nature to actually occasionally enjoy destroying something.
Yeah. And I don't know if you noticed it, but I did avalanche with you when you were yelling at God and like, don't you want us to have this moment? And your arms were up in the air. I had my arms up too, and I was like this, like, fuck you, God. Like, fuck you.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
I was like piling on.
No, you were.
Right?
But I didn't know if you were like parroting my vibe or if you were actually doing
both. And I'm like, it's like, yeah, fuck you. Like,
but
also like I'm building on like what I'm doing is like I recognize the frustration. I totally see it. I get it. It makes sense to me. I also, one of the things that I think we all have had to deal with is your parent making that wrong. Right? Your parent making
the spilled milk.
Yeah.
Yep.
So them freaking out about the emotion. And here's what this is what I do with all of my clients. This is the deepest work I've done with myself, is how can I hold myself in this emotion and make it okay? Yeah. How can it be okay for me to be angry? How can it be okay for me to be sad and feel the emotion? I just taught yoga, and in all my classes I always talk about how emotion is simply energy in motion. And so when we're feeling something, we don't want to deny it. We want to just like feel it. Like I like to explain emotions like weather that are like moving through our body. And so if we kind of bring this back to relationships, most divorces are instigated by, women are the more so the person that's filing for a divorce. But that happens for a lot of different reasons. One is because women have had to be really conscious and think about if the relationship is actually really working for them. They've worked through this long process. I can guarantee they've brought it to their partner multiple times. Yeah. And the partner's been resistant to stepping into the relationship. Yeah, the resistance toward behavioral change is exceeding the behavioral change being made. And you can only deal with that gap for so long until you're like, I think, there's my theory. When it reaches that point, you actually realize you're not in a relationship. Exactly. Because a relationship is a give and take, compromise, work on yourself. And you're like, it's like mountain climbing when the people are climbing and then you're setting the rope for the next person. And you're able to do like this and you help each other. Yeah. But if you're not doing that, if one person's just staying there and this person's like, dude, like, come on, dude. Like, like you're not in a relationship. Oftentimes the person that's trying to move the relationship forward, wanting to progress the relationship, will be the woman. And so the man in general, and this is like part of man's nature. So I also love this about you guys, right? But it's also a challenge, is that there is a lot of resistance, and it's resistance to behavioral change. And the reason why this happens is because men have this belief system, and we can point to the patriarchy. Not everybody knows what that means. So if that doesn't know what you mean, ultimately what it means is that men in one way or another believe that their value is more important than a woman. And so just by them being in a relationship, it's almost like, hey, this is like kind of good enough. But that might have been good enough 100 years ago when the woman couldn't get divorced, she couldn't get her own job. Now we can, right? Now I can say, hey, this relationship, I need this from you.
Yeah. I've explained it to some people, like, look, for a long time, the basic things that a man provided and that a woman needed were the same.
Yeah.
It was like food, shelter, protection.
Yeah. Safety and security.
And now that is being provided by a woman on her own if she wants to provide it for herself.
Yeah.
What she actually wants is like an evolved partner, right? So a lot of the things that the men's DNA literally has been just like concentrated on to provide safety and these things, and they're not the higher minded things necessarily. By the way, generalizations, as I say, are a great way to begin a conversation.
For sure.
And they're a bigoted way to end one.
Yeah, it's always nuanced, but
So
I think we can
we're
recognize.
talking in some generalizations.
Yeah, we're making generalizations because it's more simple to make them, but
And
we
it's-
recognize that there's always variance with energy in gender. Yeah.
And so they want more evolved partners.
Yeah.
And they're also being simultaneously really competed with in the workplace. We act like it's a friendly thing, but you're actually competing for like a socioeconomic position of a job.
Yeah.
So that is the jungle. So we're actually like, how a lot of men view it is like, now we're in the jungle and we're trying to hunt lions, or we're hunting antelope or whatever. We're trying to provide. And now there's an equal amount of female hunters in the jungle with us. Yeah. But I'm also being told that I should like mate with one of those. But my DNA's inclination is I do not want to mate with competition.
Yeah.
Like I don't, So like it's I think that is the result of like that ends up having a lot of guys actually trying to find mates outside of American society or outside of their native country, because they just have this ick vibe of like, I don't want to partner up with my competition. Mm-hmm. As much as I may like these females, it's inherently coupling with competition. And so, but I'm also simultaneously being told that we're on the same team when we get home together, but when we leave the house, we're in the jungle hunting the same things together. So it's a very confusing amount of dimensions that I don't think anybody's properly articulating.
Yeah. Well, like what comes to mind, there's so many ways we could go. Like this conversation's like so juicy.
It's so juicy.
It's so juicy, but I love the awareness of like that it feels like women are a competitor at work. But what I think is really important is that the way that we're looking at that is almost like women are the problem.
Oh, not at all.
But I know you're not necessarily saying that, but the negative result is actually affecting women, when what we need to look to is the system or the structure, right? The corporate, the patriarchy, whatever it is, it's creating these structures that is creating that environment. But I, first off, love that, and love the recognition that like men are trying to outsource, and that really speaks to the idea of like masculine feminine dynamics, because women who are in the workforce more naturally will present more masculine energy, and I think that that's where that disconnect in terms of attraction can happen. And then they're wanting to, let's just say, like, I don't know, I have this friend that was like, I'm only going to do a mail order bride. Like, he's like, I'm not gonna like marry an American woman. It's like only a mail order bride. But ultimately it's about control, right? It's about control. Like, I need to have a woman who isn't at a similar level to me.
No, I think that's inaccurate. I understand where you're coming from that, but I think that's a simplification of male existence. And I think what it is so much more multi-layered than that. It's more into the layers of what I was describing. except there's not a lot of men that can describe it like I'm describing
Tell me how.
Now, if every single man was able to describe it like I just was,
We'd have
the
a better
world
society.
would change, right? Because what I'm saying is you are seeing the truth, and let me explain that truth from a very multi-layered male perspective.
Let's hear it.
That I've been meditating and seeing this stuff like for a long time. You know, so like that's why I was so pumped about having this conversation.
We could talk about gender and energy,
and we both respect each other, and we both see a lot of things similar, and we see a few things different,
which is awesome.
Which makes for an interesting exchange.
Totally.
You know,
for sure.
And I think it's an oversimplification that men want to like have that control, and more of the females are just like way too matrixy. Like I would like a less matrixed female. For sure. And like and I also don't like being shamed for like having a woman that likes to stay home, that creates like an amazing vibe at home, that like I'm not like forcing her to be in that position. But I still feel good as a man to be able to provide that for her should she want it.
Hell yeah.
And if she does want it, and I'm getting shamed for that, because my females are like over matrixified.
Yeah.
They're so deep in the matrix, and I respect their matrix success, but matrix is just dripping off of them now. And it's like there's not that much beautiful femininity to grab onto. It's almost like trying to make love to a computer program.
Totally. Yeah, I'm like I'm not denying that at all. I think what the challenge is because I've been that woman, right? I was a global director for 5 brands, you know, I was carrying so much, like for the feminine to carry this much in terms of business, it's a lot. And so it's a lot to have that job, and then it's a lot to go home to a partner and feel in your masculine, and then have a partner that doesn't help support you to become feminine. And so I think that's where men's role is now, is men also are, men forget that their job is, again, to protect and to provide. And part of that is like helping a woman open up into that feminine energy. And it takes a lot for a woman to just be like, okay, now I'm at home. Now I've like checked out from work, and now I'm going to go home and be feminine.
But that's what I'm saying. But it's been difficult for women to make that switch. Now we can blame men for not supporting them, which is kind of what's happening a little bit right now.
It's both and, right? It's women.
But a woman should know how to be a woman regardless of if there's a man or not. Let's believe in feminist ideology, which is like, I'm a woman, hear me roar. That means you're not dependent on anybody else for your feeling of womanhood.
No, but we get to my belief is that the way that a woman fully can step into her feminine is she needs a masculine pole.
For sure. But you're saying she's in her masculine and needs to be reminded how to be feminine from the man. The man doesn't know how to be feminine. He depends on the woman for that.
It's not, he doesn't become feminine. He becomes masculine and helps her to bring out her feminine. So this is like the polarity that I help couples to work on. So the beautiful thing about this is we can't say it's all men or it's all women. It's all of us.
It's both. It takes two.
It takes both. So
there may be slightly different percentages. But things take two. They're mirrors.
For sure.
Mirrors are mirrors.
You know, women will come in complaining about men. Men come in complaining about women. We can come in complaining about ourselves, but we all have to take stock about where we're at. And I am of the belief that right now it is men's time to step further into relationship, to develop their emotional fitness more. To become better partners for women, so that we can like rest a little. A lot's been expected.
And a lot of men have a problem with that.
For sure.
And they're like, dude, I'm already
because they don't know how.
Working so hard.
Exactly.
It feels like they're being constantly reprogrammed to a new iOS that's never good enough.
Yeah.
That's how men feel, just to be real.
Well, that's just the masculinity in general, because the interesting thing about masculinity, it's something that in general constantly needs to be proved. You constantly have to show how masculine you are, but versus a woman, I don't have to do that. I never am like, this is how feminine I am. Like, I can wear pants and be feminine. I can wear a dress and be feminine. Our femininity isn't questioned because I've got these two things, right? So it's like people aren't questioning. They're like, oh, I just am like naturally more feminine. No one's like, she needs to be, you know, whatever. But men, men are also demonized for having any feminine flair. And
Yeah.
so there's this mixed message that men are getting, especially in the personal development world, where some people are like, men just need to feel more and men need to express themselves more. And then there's other people like Andrew Tate that are like, men need to be more men, you know, all of these like messages. And it's like,
Yeah.
what actually does need to happen? And
Yeah. They're all different versions of like a pendulum swing. And the
Totally.
pendulum's not 2D. It's like there's 3-dimensional pendulums, like in all sorts of ways happening in all sorts of.
For sure.
And they're not happening. Nothing's happening out of a vacuum. If we just take responsibility for all of our karma as a human species,
yeah.
then we can just like own the fact that like we've created all of it, and all of it's just karma bouncing off of things like a pinball machine. And that segues into, Jacqueline, what is if you have one message for people about relationships to get out there, what is your relationship advice to people that you think is like the most important to say in this current incarnation of yourself?
Stay in the arena. Like, the arena is relationship. I think one of the things that I see in a lot of people is that relationships feel hard, or that people aren't meeting the right person, and so they step back and they wait.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're just like, I'm going to keep working and it's just going to come in. Like, that's a lie. I mean, of course, relationships are always going to come in, but relationships are like a garden. And so
they take cultivation
exactly.
and love and attention. And,
you have to draw up a plan. What kind of relationships do you want, right? Draw
it's
up
a lot of
garden.
work. But then when you see the garden growing, the feeling inside is amazing.
Exactly. So you have to think about, what do I want to
Stay
plant?
in the arena.
Yeah, you got to get the seeds.
Don't leave. Oh, we leave so easily now.
Yeah.
Oh, they did this, so I blocked them. They did that, so I blocked them. It's like
everyone's
it's like
so sensitive.
It's the cutoff Olympics.
Exactly.
People are bragging to each other about how sociopathically they're cutting everybody out.
Even your parents, right? It's like everyone's cutting off everyone. And of course, if a relationship is really terrible and toxic,
of course,
we want to cut it off. But also, in
stay
general,
in the arena.
If something is toxic, it's not just due to one person, it's due to two.
It's due to two.
Relationships are a two-man job, and so you have also taken active part in that. And so just recognizing that we live in a digital world. People think things are a lot more disposable. You have access to meeting all these fucking cool people all around LA.
Stay in the arena.
Stay in the arena, you know?
Jacqueline, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, darling.
I love you.
Love you too. Jacqueline Stevens, everybody.
So nice to hang out with you guys. #slay.
Welcome to the J Money Podcast. Welcome to the J Money Podcast. Welcome to the J Money Podcast. We like to talk about all sorts of things.